Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Drive My Car, starring, let me see if I say these names right, Hidetoshi Nishijima, forgive me if I said that wrong, Toko Miura, and Rieka Kurashima, forgive me if I said those names wrong, directed by Ryosuke Hamaguchi. I don't know if I said that right either. Please forgive me, guys. I'm not trying to say your names wrong, I promise you. But before I get into this movie, this is my first two viewings, and both times I watched this, it was kind of a chore because you have to read subtitles for 3 hours and pay very close attention to it. So let's see what if I paid close enough attention from watching the subtitles. An actor slash director named Yusuke Kafuku wakes up next to his wife Odo as they have a conversation of a dream Odo had as it's morning in Japan, and they get ready for the day. And Yusuke drives Odo to her work, and they talk about a play Yusuke he's he's acted in as the curtains go up at 6 o'clock in the PM. I'll say. Then we move on to the plays he's acting in, and Odo introduces Yusuke to a friend named Takashi Kimura, as I get the impression they're having an affair while Odo is married to Yusuke. And the shots in this movie are nice for sure, but the only character I can relate with is Yusuke, and Odo, as Odo is obviously having an affair while he goes to the airport, and his flight is delayed until the next day due to the cold weather. And this movie is long for sure, and this first 20 to 40 minutes is what makes this overstretched to a 3 hour movie. As 40 minutes could be in the editing room floor, in my opinion, as it's absolutely pointless. Because remember, this movie is called Drive My Car, and it won't get to that point until 40 minutes into the movie. A week later, Yosuke comes back to Japan and gets in an accident with a blue van and is taken to the hospital despite he's fine, but he has glaucoma, which is a disease that damages your eye's optic nerve. And the next scene, they're at a funeral with Oto driving the car, as she doesn't focus on the road at the right times, nor does she change lanes. And again, edit some of this out, as it's taking way too long to get to the point. They get home and have sexual intercourse, and I'm feeling like how long is this movie is taking. This movie does move on 40 minutes into it, and I'm waiting for this movie to on it as I'm 25 minutes into it, and I'm not digging this romance between Yusuke and Oto. And I don't like Oto at this point, and hopefully she'll disappear after 40 minutes, as the sex scene is a little too prolonged in my opinion. The next morning, Yusuke watches Fish on YouTube while Oto is listening to the music, and Yusuke tells Oto he's teaching a workshop, and she asks if they can talk later that night. And as it comes, and Yusuke knows a divorce is coming, as he's driving and parks the car as he comes home and sees Oto has died for whatever reason the reason was, and her funeral comes, and Takashi is there, and we move on to Yusuke acting scene while he's depressed, which is again pointless. 2 years later, Yusuke is driving his car to a theater in Hiroshima, and the opening credits suddenly appear, and this is when the movie should have started, in my opinion, because it makes better sense than the first 40 minutes of the movie, as he's directing a play. But first, he gets a house for rent for 2 months that's at an island and is an hour away from the theater, hiring a driver who's a girl named Misaki. And Yusuke is reluctant about it at first, but he ends up letting her drive, as the theater has a rule because of an artist running over someone with the car while back, which I get, but at the same time, if it were up to me up front, it makes sense. The cinematography is beautiful to look at, and I would like to visit Japan one day for its beauty reasons and because of sushi, as I love sushi and it tastes so good for my stomach. They head to the house, which is very nice with a view that's incredible. The next day comes as they hold auditions, and it goes well. No violent breakdowns are in the director by any means, and the actors they hired are pretty good, despite quite a few of them speak different languages, and one is deaf and signs in Korean, And there were times that they could barely speak English, and it's impressive how they speak and sign in different languages. I'm having a better time with the movie than the first 40 minutes. Everyone has passed the audition part, just not the roles they wanted, and they start practicing their lines in the script. And the writing here is great, as I could follow the plot a little better now that we're in the scenes that make this movie deserve the title it has. Misaki drives Yusuke home, and he listens to the lines on the tape, and he hears his actor speak the lines. And one of the actors invites Yusuke for a drink, and they drink together but never get drunk, which thank God for that. But somebody snaps a photo of Yusuke, and the actor flips out while Yusuke says it's fine, but eventually in a later scene, the actor goes to the photographer and tells him to delete the picture, as he does the first photographer, but they leave the restaurant, and the actor felt ashamed to have invited him for drinks, which was an odd scene in general. They practice the lines the next day, and the deaf girl and her husband invite Yusuke in for dinner at their house, which was a nice and better scene than the one at the bar, which felt awkward, but the scene is done better as it's better acted. But don't get me wrong, the movie is well shot, well made, but it better not pull off a Parasite where it wins both Best Foreign Language Film and Best Picture of the Year, which thankfully it didn't, because in my opinion, Parasite was a great film, but it was a cheat in my opinion. But this is so far a pretty good film. After dinner, Misaki brings up the deaf girl as one of his characters, Sonia, and decides to drop it and talk about awkward conversations as Yusuke asks Misaki how she learned to drive and explains her origin as she drove when she was in junior high school. And I like Misaki as a character, and same goes with the actors, as I can't say their names justice, but this is working for me quite well. Two of the actors are late for rehearsing lines as it felt awkward, and the script does a good job at making me care for these characters as they're playing different characters in the play. Misaki takes Yusuke to a place where it collects garbage and takes it to the sea, as she started driving garbage trucks when she grew up, and they go on a dock and have a cigarette break. And I like the shots in that scene as it's beautiful to look at. Everyone goes to the park and to practice their lines, which makes sense for the acting world. And I can relate with the movie at this point. And the same actor goes to another bar and get their picture taken, and the actor goes after him and tells him to delete the photo once again, but in the parking lot, which did kind of make me laugh a little. Misaki and Yusuke offer to drive the actor to his hotel as Yusuke brings up he had a daughter with Oto as she died before the events of this movie, and that piece of dialogue is genius on the writer's part as we've never seen a daughter in this movie, and they bring up Oto in the dialogue works tremendously, but the scene took way too long, and I wanted the movie to move on at this point. Saki and Yusuke drop off the actor at his hotel, as it didn't sound like the actor was lying about Oto, as Yusuke and Misaki smoke out the window in the car, and this is the point I fell asleep the first time I saw the movie. They act on stage in front of Yusuke, who's the director, and the police come by to ask some questions as he's guilty of murder he committed, and goes with the officers to the police station. And this particular actor is arrested, and they have two choices. One, Yusuke acts in the role, and two, cancel the show as the movie is kind of falling apart. Starting right here, as it's a bit too long, they drive for hours back to Japan, and again, I'm falling asleep as 5 minutes of this could have been cut out and remained in the editing room. And the Batman is almost the same around amount of hours, and yet I was able to follow what was happening in that film more than here. They get on a ship and arrive in a snowy place, and what in the hell is happening at this point, as I'm now completely lost. Like, how did we get to the snowy place, which doesn't make sense? They walk towards to what I'm led to believe is Misaki's house, as they throw flowers at the abandoned, broken down house, and she brings up how her mother would treat her terribly and had a terrible childhood, and it's going back to being sort of interesting as Yusuke confesses why Oto died, and he wants to see her as he wants to yell at her and wants her back in general, which is a heartbreaking scene and moment of the film. The play continues with Yusuke replacing the actors in the role or the one actor in the role, I'll say, he had as he acts depressed, and people watch the play in the break rooms TV, and his acting is good as the end of the play goes to the deaf girl monologuing as the play ends and the movie itself ends on COVID times, as some woman is wearing a mask at the grocery store and drives away to her house. And the climax is sort of interesting, but at the same time, it's confusing to me. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 7.3 out of 10. Despite this isn't as good as Parasite, not by a long shot, which I'm still shocked it won Best Picture 2020, as they're both good films in my opinion. There were times the movie got awkward, but the movie does a good job at relating with these characters as that are playing other characters on the stage. But the first 40 minutes shouldn't be in this movie, as this movie dragged to 3 hours, as this movie is a bit too long, and it should have been 2 hours and 20 minutes in my opinion. Despite this is a good film and it deserves the best foreign language film, but not best picture of the year, so it better not pull that off again. But if you're up to reading subtitles for 3 hours, it is a bit of a chore, and that is fine if you want to go through that. And overall, it's a good film, but at the end of the day, it falls apart, and it's still a decent film, despite I'm not a big fan of foreign language films in general. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me for Drive My Car, and until then, drive my car.